what we're doing today. Wow, I aged myself with that. That was very 90s dad. It's Leanne and welcome back to another video. On today's episode of Leanne's Existential Crisis, I will be delivering to you guys some bookish recommendations and a plethora of my opinions, for you have asked me questions and I shall answer them. Or at least I'll answer as many of them as I can without getting myself cancelled or arrested. Because there are no rich booktubers. This is what we spend our money on, guys. This stuff. There's no bail money, nobody's coming to let me out with a mouth like this. I don't think I would do very well there. But before we get to the random book recommendations and my equally random opinions, I would first like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands and thousands of classes that you can take in any subject that you can possibly think of. That's right, for all of your niche loves and obsessions, there's a class for that. And there are also members in those classes, fellow students who share your really random love for, I don't know, haiku poetry or digital illustrating or embroidery. Seriously, if it exists, there's an expert on it and they are on Skillshare. So what about me? Why do I like Skillshare? Well, over the last couple of weeks, as my house has slowly descended into a construction zone and I have clawed my way back out to the other side of it, I would like to spend some time curating my space, cleansing it, if you will, making it positive again. And so I turned to a class by the wonderful Holly Taylor called Crystal Therapy 101. I have spent the last couple of days under the auspices of Holly's amazing advice, cleansing, charging and arranging my crystals to give my home the best glow. If you, like me, were finding your days crammed with endless to-do lists and just soul draining stuff, and you would like to prioritise yourself and your space a little bit, why don't you come along and join the Skillshare bandwagon? It is a completely ad-free environment so you can learn with absolutely no disruptions, and there are new premium classes that are launched literally every week. The first 1,000 people to click my link down below or use my code here on screen will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So come along, join me on the journey of prioritising your mental health by doing something that isn't work. Okay, let's get started with the random recommendations. For the last couple of these videos, we have used some truly torturous methods to find some random recommendations from my shelves, all the way from like word association to randomly generated Pantone swatches. But today, the random recommendations will be generated by you guys. Because it's been a while since I just said, what is it that you want to read? And I will hook you up. It's my unofficial title, by the way, book hooker-upper. And of course, in between the recommendations will be my opinions that you have asked for. I just like the list of my opinions that exist in my head that I can pull out at any dinner table. Okay, first up we've got Sell Me Your Favourite Classic. Never has a recommendation request been better worded. In fairness, I have a lot of classic literature that I really love, from stuff that I studied in university to stuff that I discovered later on when I realised that there were things outside of the accepted canon which also had literary merit. And so really I could answer this recommendation request in a variety of different ways, but I'm just going to go with straight up vintage Leanne. And I'm going to talk about The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. This is a book that if you've been around my channel for a while, you will know that I absolutely adore. It was one of my very first sort of like gothic classic mysteries that I read, and So a little bit of flash history on this. Wilkie Collins was a contemporary and a writing partner of Charles Dickens, and together they pioneered the idea of serialising novels. So instead of finding the capital to publish a first run of books or selling a book to a publisher where it was never a surefire deal that it was actually going to be popular, Wilkie Collins and Charles Dickens decided that they were going to publish one chapter at a time in the newspaper. But because of the serial nature of these novels, and in order to get readers desperate to buy the next publication, they always had to end each section, each chapter on a cliffhanger. And that's what makes The Woman in White and other Wilkie Collins books like The Moonstone so incredibly compelling, because at the end of every chapter you're sold a tiny, tiny secret, a little key to the plot that unlocks the next chapter, and you are just driven to find out what happens. So The Woman in White is about Walter. He is a drawing master and he takes a job in the English countryside teaching to very wealthy young women to do proper art. On his last night in London, he is travelling in a horse-drawn taxi and a woman dressed entirely in white just steps out into the road. Walter, seeing that she is in a huge amount of distress and has no means to get herself to where she needs to go, does the gentlemanly thing, packs her into his taxi and pays for her journey. And that's it. He doesn't really think anything else of this weird spooky occurrence until he gets to the house in the countryside where one of the young women bears a startling resemblance to that woman in white. And that woman, it turns out, is in grave danger of being married off to a fortune hunter who wants only her inheritance, which means that she is expendable. It also helps that this book contains one of the most kick-ass female characters I have ever seen in all of classic literature, and who also thinks that all of the men around her are absolute idiots, and she's gonna have to fix this because apparently nobody else is capable. There you go, that's my favourite classic book and I have sold it to you. I hope that you enjoy it. And now for some opinions. So first up, I've got most annoying question that you are asked all the time. Where do I start? Actually, in all seriousness, the most annoying question that I, and I'm pretty sure any other booktuber in your life has been asked 1,000 times and is thoroughly sick of hearing is, how do I start a booktube channel? Because for the most part, all of us just kind of did it. We signed up to YouTube, some of us in the dark mists of like 10 years ago, and we used whatever technology we had, which for me was like the first Google tablet ever that made this really horrible whirring and clicking internal noise. And I didn't have an external microphone because I didn't know that they existed, so I had to really speak up for you to hear me. My formula for booktube has always just been love books, talk about the books that you love, and try not to be a dick. And for the most part, I think I've probably succeeded. Next up is, which Greek goddess do you associate yourself with most? Why, thank you for recognising my legendary status. I consider my little witchy self to be exactly between two extremes. I love the ocean and I love the rolling fields. I would ideally like a little cottage on the edge of some woodland, and at the other side of the woodland I want there to be sea with like massive dramatic waves bashing off of dull cliffs. Instead of this shiny blue water nonsense, I want proper stormy seas. So I'm gonna say, on the one hand, Amphitrite. She was the wife of Poseidon, but she was absolutely no wallflower. Poseidon picked her from like 100 of her sisters out of the middle of this dancing troupe, and she was like, nah mate. And she buggered all the way off to Atlas and was like, see you later. And then he sent a dolphin after her to bring her back, which is ironic if you Google dolphins and their various behaviours towards the vulnerable females and individuals of the sea. And on the other hand, I'm going to go with Demeter. She was of course Persephone's mother, and that is why everybody knows her, but she was also the goddess of the harvests and the fields and the farmers, and incidentally also the goddess of poppies, which is a weird and incidental thing, but I will take it. Next random recommendation request is for my favourite books that feature serial killers. Now I will say straight up that the serial killer books that I own are not your average serial killer books. I do not read a lot of crime or procedural mystery where people are looking into typically serial killer cases. You know, I've said it before, the kind of stuff that either has the grizzled detective or the like BAU like team from Criminal Minds. Although if I could guarantee that there would be a sweet cinnamon roll character like Spencer Reid in any of those books, I would read them immediately. So if you know they exist, please sell them to me. Instead, my serial killers come in slightly different forms. First up, we have Stillhouse Lake by Rachel Caine. This is the first in a series. I loved the first two. I feel like the series kind of went downhill after that, but you can also absolutely read Stillhouse Lake as a standalone, which lots of people choose to do, so that will also work for either preference. Stillhouse Lake is about Gwen. One day she is driving home her teen and her preteen, and she rounds the corner to her house and discovers emergency vehicles everywhere. She is like, what the what now? And then realises that the worst thing, the thing that she always worried about, has actually happened. Somebody has taken the crazy corner next to her house way too fast and has gone straight into her garage. Garage? When did I move to like middle America? Garage. They drove into the garage. It went boom. So she gets out the car, she goes up to the cops, she's like, oh my god, this is my house. I hope nobody has been hurt. That corner has been a hazard my entire life. And the police officer says, you are under arrest. Because when that car went into the garage, the hanging body of a woman was found, killed in exactly the same way as a local serial killer had been killing his victims for months. And Gwen swiftly realises that that serial killer is her husband. The book then flashes forward to a few years later. Gwen is now in witness protection and is absolutely accosted by people who do not believe that she had nothing to do with the murder. She's trying to keep her teens safe, and then one day a body floats to the top of Stillhouse Lake where her new home is, and it has been killed in exactly the same method as the body from her garage. Stillhouse Lake is really great if you like that really ominous, creepy, there's somebody just behind you vibe. I dare anybody to say that sentence and not immediately look. Next up, I'm going to recommend to you Jane Doe by Victoria Helen Stone. Jane does, in fact, live in mid-America. She works for an insurance company and she is nondescript and averagely attractive, as described by the men that she works with, which is ideal because Jane is there for a reason. You see, Jane has spent a lot of time studying Stephen, and Stephen absolutely brings out all of the worst things in Jane while she slowly insinuates herself into his life and into his bed and into all of his business dealings, while he enjoys all of the flattery and the attention and has absolutely no idea who she is or what he did to her years and years ago. This is a beautiful twist on the serial killer trope, and it's the closest thing that I've ever found to Sweet Pea, which of course we all love for Rhiannon and her serial killer gory goodness. Back to question and opinion time. Is the hair tie that you wear on your wrist in every video there for anxiety? Okay, so some of y'all are creepily observant. Yes, you are correct. This is indeed an omnipresent part of my outfit. And it is indeed here for anxiety fiddling. And also because I have a really bad habit of dipping my hair in things, because for years and years and years and years and years, I had incredibly short hair. And although I have had long hair for, oh, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years now, I'm still not used to it. What is a book that you've read that you hate with an absolute passion? And why? Oh, do you know what, guys? The first book that I thought in response to that is a book that I've moaned about a few times on this channel, but what the hell, it bears repeating. I do not understand why any of you guys like The Silent Patient by Alix Michaelides. Apart from being a really quite average and pretty predictable thriller, it somehow manages to be both overwritten and insipid at the same time, which is just a feat of genius. And if we just break it down to its component parts, it is essentially about a privileged white cisgendered middle-aged man who has unprecedented access to extremely mentally unwell women who are in very vulnerable positions, and then for plot reasons he picks one particular woman to focus on and spends the entire rest of the book telling you why she's not like the other mentally unwell women. Specifically, she's not like the fat, greasy, smelly other women who are in this unit, who are hideous and unattractive and leave stains on all of the walls and glass that they touch. But their mental health challenges are of course much less appealing than this woman's mental health challenges, because if she actually just, you know, had a bath and had a haircut and stuff, she would be a beautiful, vivacious woman again. It is freaking gross, and it also doesn't make any sense because in any kind of NHS run mental health facility like that, there would be cameras everywhere, there would be sign out logs everywhere. He would never have the kind of one-to-one contact that he has with this woman in back rooms away from everybody else with no security. I just don't get it. It just makes me feel incredibly skeeve, and I have yet to hear a reasonable reason from any of you why it was a really good book. Next recommendation is for a book that feels like true crime but but has nothing to do with murder. Okay, so I'm going to assume that when you say feels like true crime, you also don't want anything else in the true crime genre, you know, like books about art heists or anything like that. But instead you want something that kind of has that ominous and hair-raising feel that you get with true crime. And I'm actually quite pleased with my selection for this one because I think that it fits the brief almost 100%. I'm going to recommend to you I Am by Maggie O'Farrell. So this is a memoir, but Maggie O'Farrell is of course an author. She has written a lot of literary fiction and more recently some historical fiction like The Wonderful Hamnet. And I always do say this, I say that there feels like two kinds of memoirs. The first kind, which is just written by somebody who had an extraordinary thing happen to them but who had no intention of being an author. Some of those are ghostwritten, some of them are very sort of plain. The writing isn't descriptive or imaginative, often doesn't really evoke a feeling of time or place. It's just a very straightforward view of what happened to them. And then there's the other kind of memoir that comes from people who love to write or are authors and who are able to bring a little bit of that storytelling technique into the memoir to make you feel the same atmosphere as if you were reading fiction. In I Am, Maggie O'Farrell definitely hits the latter of those two tones because Maggie has had a truly extraordinary life. This is her memoir of the 17 individual brushes with death that she has had in her life. Some of those are from illness, some of those are from ominous outside forces, and some of them are from accidents. And it feels as a reader almost unreal, like surreal, that one person could have had all of these near brushes with death, all of these times where things could have just been absolutely over in the blink of an eye. And I feel like that kind of reflects the true crime tone a lot of the time. But also this book has a kind of like overwhelmingly thick atmosphere. It really feels like it's building to something. And of course, to top it all off, a couple of the things that actually happened to Maggie in her life could belong in a true crime book. So I'm going to recommend this one, and I hope that was what you meant. Now for some more opinions. If you could banish any Agatha Christie book, what would it be? This is actually deeply ironic because I just recently did a video with the lovely Jean that you can find on her channel where I absolutely trashed some of the books that were on her TBR, and one of them was a Poirot book. It was the ABC Murders, and in that video I was essentially like, oh my god, I hate this book. It's the most commercial Poirot book. It's the Poirot book where he takes on like international spy stuff. You can tell that Agatha Christie really didn't enjoy writing it. It feels very out of place for Poirot that usually oscillate between like small town mysteries, big time London, and some really like very refined international places like the French Riviera. And all of those things are still true, but they're not the ABC Murders. They are in fact the big four. Yeah, I guess that's what happens when there are 30 odd books in a series and the ones that you hate just kind of merge together. So my initial answer would still be this book, The Big Four. It is terrible. It is absolutely not a favourite Poirot. But the reason why I spotted this cover and went, ah, I hate that, is because I also hate the ABC Murders. So both of these books, I feel like they just shouldn't exist. Next recommendation request that we have got is for graphic novels that aren't the popular ones you hear about all the time. This one I can absolutely deliver for you because I am actually a huge fan of graphic novels. I have read a lot of them in the past. I don't talk about them a lot on my channel because I haven't bought a lot of them in the last couple of years. Quite honestly, I just go through them so quickly that it's really hard to justify spending all that money on them. And also another controversial opinion that you didn't ask for, I am not a huge fan of the really popular series, especially Saga. So with that in mind, I will recommend to you 3 graphic novels that I can almost guarantee that you will probably not have heard of. First up, we have got Blacksad, and you can pick this up in 3 completed volumes. Essentially, if you love Raymond Chandler's Philip Marlowe series or anything else in that kind of like hard-bitten LA private detective genre, then you are absolutely gonna love Blacksad, because that's essentially everything that you're gonna find in Blacksad. He's an investigator, he is working with an extremely morally corrupt police system. There's politics both at high level and low level in this. There's casinos, there's gang bosses, there are femme fatales, there are snitches, there are iconic characters. And between all of these mysteries and compelling twisty plots, you will probably forget that you are reading about anthropomorphized animals. That's right, Blacksad is a cat, a like human-sized adult male cat. But although it may sound strange, the way that the authors use these animals to represent different kinds of human emotions is pretty amazing. I mean, the town snitch is still a weasel and the chief of police is still a German shepherd, but there are a few other very, very on-the-nose characters. I shan't say any more, no spoilers, I'll let you investigate it yourself, but I think that this series is just so clever. Another series that I absolutely love is the Goldie Vance series. My lovely friend Kirsty put me onto these graphic novels when I was looking for something that was graphic novel and queer and also mystery, and that's everything that you're going to find in these. Goldie Vance is 16, she is queer, she is biracial, and she is living in the 1950s. There's a lot of soda pop and grease fashion going on here, if you know what I mean. Goldie works the reception at a Florida resort where she lives with her father, and she helps the in-house detective with all of the extremely complicated crimes that happen when there are very wealthy people all together in a resort environment, like somebody done stole my necklace from my room and you better get it back. But the first case that Goldie takes on her own grows arms and legs, and some of those arms and legs are incredibly sapphic, and some of them involve Goldie drag racing around Florida, and some of them involve a helicopter chase. It's just great. It's just a great series. The art is absolutely adorable, and I think it's a nice bridge between like YA and the mystery genres. And then finally I will recommend to you Thornhill by Pam Smy. This is a horror graphic novel all about a girl who moves to a new town when her father unexpectedly becomes a single parent. He is out at work every day just trying to make ends meet, and it leaves her with a lot of time to be in the house on her own, looking at the old abandoned property over her back garden fence. Because this property used to be a children's home and it has a somewhat sinister past with a very gory ending. And then one day our young character sees somebody running through the grounds of that children's home, another girl who she thinks might just be as lonely as her, and she decides to go in and investigate. I absolutely love Thornhill. I love all of the illustrations. They're this black, white and inky grayscale tone. They're just very foreboding and I love that. And half of this book is written entirely in diary entries, and we know how I feel about epistolary novels. There you go, there's some graphic novels that I think y'all are sleeping on and you should read those. More opinion requests. Favourite witchy book. I'm not sure whether you mean favourite non-fiction witchy book or favourite fiction witchy book, so I will just give you a couple. For recent reads, we of course know that I love Once and Future Witches by Alix E. Harrow. I also recently read Hex by Jenni Fagan and that was great. For non-fiction, I really recommend Becoming Dangerous. This is a really feminist, very, very modern take on reclaiming your craft. And then I also really like In Defense of Witches by Mona Chollet, which is a really interesting take on the history of witchcraft. I find like the history of witchcraft always ends up going back to witch burning, and it always focuses more on the forces that were against it rather than on witchcraft itself, and Mona Chollet really turns this on its head. She gives us a look at like people who are practicing now and like how selling grimoires on Etsy and doing like tarot readings on Instagram all kind of ties back to old practices. More opinions, tropes that you have recently absolutely hated. Okay, a quick rundown. I am really hating, especially in the romance genre right now, the amount of books that are coming up with a teacher-student relationship in any way. Even if these two people are adults, the power dynamic of somebody working within an institution that kind of holds your academic future in its grasp and you being in a romantic relationship with them is just like inherently not okay and kind of skeevy. Stalker books, the amount of stalker books and especially romances that are coming out right now, I think mostly in the way that publishing is kind of a few years delayed in trends, and so we're now seeing a lot of books that have Shadows of You, the TV series, in it. Books that kind of just glorify this idea that in order to feel looked after, usually as a cisgendered woman, you have to have a man who is actively like watching your back and keeping evil forces away from you. As if like the real issue in this isn't that as a woman you shouldn't have to worry about the evil forces that are after you or have anybody looking after you, let alone a man who is also kind of usually part of the evil forces. The whole like stalker genre is just not in my happy ick wheelhouse, it's just in my really gross ick wheelhouse. Oh, and then finally, weirdly, the amount of mixed media novels that have come out in the last couple of years that don't actually use the mixed media format to give you any new information. They just use it as like a gimmick to get you to pick the novel up. Like if you're giving me emails and text messages and stuff like that, I want it to be some sort of like breadcrumb trail for me to work things out for myself. I don't want you to just show me that information in an email and on the next page have like the character explain what you've just read. It's a really pointless waste of a graphic designer's time, guys. Okay, now for my last recommendation request. A thriller book about relationships that is not a domestic thriller. That is a really good question. Ooh, I know, I've got one. Apple Tree Yard by Louise Doughty. This book is about Yvonne, and we are introduced to her right from the very first page in the witness box on trial for murder. But we know immediately that this is a murder that Yvonne claims that she did not do. In fact, she had absolutely nothing to do with. But the ways in which she had nothing to do with this are going to be very, very difficult to articulate to the jury, and she doesn't think she's going to be successful. Because you see, just a few months prior to this charge, Yvonne was what everybody would consider to be a successful woman. She is a scientist, she's had a long career, she has grown children who are in themselves successes. She's a happy marriage and a happy home. And so in order to explain to us how Yvonne found herself in the witness box, she has to take us back to several months before when she was offering an opinion piece where she was there in the service of her career in the House of Commons, and she met a man who later told her that he was a spy. Anything else about it without spoilers, but this is an absolutely cracking book. I felt so claustrophobic reading this entire thing, and it was just everything that happened was so plausible, so disturbingly plausible, that I spent the entire time going, no, 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 no. But it was too late. Everything is too late because Yvonne is already on trial for murder. And the good thing is that if you enjoy this book, you can then go and watch the TV series, which has the absolutely delightful Emily Watson in it. That's it, guys. I'm going to call it there. We did 5 recommendations, but it led us to many more than 5 books. And, you know, there were a lot of questions and opinions peppered in there. I hope that'll be enough to tide you over to the next time I drop an opinion bomb. This is the second time that I've done a video like this where I've peppered in questions with like an unhaul and now a recommendation video. So if you like this format, please let me know down below in the comments so that I can do it for more videos in the future and give you guys more chances to ask me some very strange questions. I usually ask for these strange questions and also for the prompts for me to put together my wacky TBRs over on Instagram, so if you want to be involved in that, head on over there. I also rope my patrons in on live shows when I ask them some really random questions with no context and they just have to choose one or the other. So if you want to be in on that shenanigans, you can join my Patreon down below. And do not forget to check out the wonderful sponsors of today's video, Skillshare. Remember that the first 1,000 people who use my code or click my link down below will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare all to themselves. As always, if you have read any of the books in this video and you think I am either right or wrong, please feel free to leave your opinions down below. I love to read them. If you are new, please consider subscribing. If you enjoyed it, please hit that thumbs up. It really does support my channel, and I will speak to you all very, very soon, guys. Bye!